September 2022. It's 10 years since the release of the Leica M240. If you follow this channel for a while, you'll know that I own the Leica M240 and I've used it since 2015. I started out with the Leica M9, then I got the M8, then the M240, then the CL, then the SL, then the Q. When I got the CL, I started using the CL and the M240 took the back seat. When I then got the SL, the CL and the M240 took the back seat and went back on the shelf, and I used the SL mostly in 2022. With my eyes now used to seeing photos from the Leica SL in particular, I thought it'd be interesting to take the Leica M240 on one of my model trips and use only the M240 and see how I got on with the vintage-ish technology. The SL is not an old camera, but as you'll see in this video, it's light years ahead in terms of how advanced it feels compared to the older Leica M240. The M240, as I say, was released in September 2012, and then the Leica SL was released in 2015. This is not one of my usual comparison videos where I'm going to show example photos from camera A versus camera B. It's literally just real world testing and showing my experience of how I thought the M240 performed and almost like first impressions after not using the camera for quite a while. I'm going to give you 6 pros and I'm going to give you 6 cons compared to cameras that I use currently, and then stay with me until the end and we'll do a roundup and see whether the Leica M240 may suit you. Let's jump into the video. Hi guys, Matt here from MrLeica.com. If you've seen this channel before, I tend to shoot female models, portraits and wedding photography, and as I say, I use various Leica cameras. I just got back from a recent model photography trip to Poland and I took with me the Leica M240, the Leica M3 and another camera which I'll show you in a future video. I was testing 2 50mm lenses, so I thought it'd be nice to use them on the M240 rather than the usual SL that I normally talk about. So let's do negatives first, and then we can do pros after. While watching this video, if you think of any pros or cons that I forgot and you're an M240 user, please drop them down in the comments below and remind us all of the features that I may have forgotten. I'm only going to cover the basics and I'm only going to cover things that caught my attention when using this for kind of real world, for me, photos. Okay, limitation number 1, in no particular order, the dynamic range of the Leica M240, whether it's scientific or not, does seem to be much more limited in real world use than the Leica SL or CL, which I use. It's very easy to clip the highlights on the Leica M240 when the exposure looks correct on your LCD. If you've not used this camera before, you do need to get used to shooting slightly underexposed so that you protect the highlights when you get the photos back on the computer. If you've used the Leica Q2 monochrome, this is very similar with the Q2M. If any of you owned the Leica M8 or the Leica M9 and then upgraded to the M240 when the M240 was released, can you remember how modern and mid-grey tones things looked compared to the very high contrast, low dynamic range of the M8 and the M9? This is how it feels to me comparing the M240 files to the SL files. I say I've not done any geeky testing. This is just me looking at the photos and thinking, wow, the highlights are pretty blown out or almost blown out in that photo and that photo and that photo. They just seem to be more high contrast, which reminds me of my photos from the M8 and the M9. Number 2. Now this I've got listed as a con, but if you love film photography, it could be a pro. What do I mean? If you shoot the Leica M240 ISO 1000 or above, you can't go too much higher than probably 1600, 2000 maximum. You're going to have very filmic looking grainy black and white photos. If you shoot black and white the same as me, I shoot raw and then add a black and white preset to the usual. They are so imperfect, they could easily be film. I'll throw up a few example photos on the screen. These are shot at ISO 1000, wide open at 1.4 and 60th of a second, and they are pretty crappy. Very different to, say, the photos from the Leica SL and some of the recent videos I did with the modern Sigma L mount lenses. I've listed it as a con, and it wouldn't be particularly useful for client work, say, such as my wedding photography. But if you're a hobbyist and you enjoy that imperfect, more organic look, you might actually prefer the high ISO results from the M240 to get that non-modern, non-super sharp look. Coming in at number 3, the maximum shutter speed of 0.004 of a second on the Leica M240 is a limitation when you have a base ISO of ISO 100 and you're not using ND filters. I was trying to use lenses wide open at 1.4 and the camera was maxing out at 4 thousandths of a second. So then having to shoot f2 and f2.8. Not ideal if you're trying to shoot shallow depth of field portraits. Obviously the way to get around this is just use ND filters, but because I've been spoilt with other cameras, I forgot that I needed to take ND filters. Coming in at number 4, ergonomics of the M240. Do you love them or do you hate them? Obviously it's not particularly designed to fit the hands, it's just a metal box. So after 2 days of shooting, I actually had a blister on my thumb from shooting, I think, probably 1,200 photos for the first 2 days of model shoots. I was only using normal size M-mount 50mm lenses and I still had like a blister and a bright red thumb. It looked like a burn. I used to use it with an Ultralux for weddings, so maybe I've got soft in my old age. One way to get around this is you could use the thumbs up type grips, the one that slips into your accessory shoe, and that gives you a more comfortable thumb grip, and then hopefully you shouldn't get red raw thumbs. Coming in at number 5, if you use the EVF on the top of the camera, the accessory EVF, mine's the Olympus version, but it's maybe the same as the Leica version. There is a big lag when you come to use this compared to using a built-in EVF on, say, the Leica SL series cameras or the Leica CL. You just have to ask the models to kind of hold still, and when it first clicks into action, it sounds like it's taking a photo. So sometimes the models move after they've heard the first click, and then I'm like, no, wait, it's not taking a picture yet, it's just the EVF turning on. That said, it is completely functional, and if you need to fine-tune your photos with a fast 50mm lens, the EVF is definitely a step forward compared to the rangefinder, which I'll come on to next. And so yes, number 6, the limitations of the Leica rangefinder system. I love it when it works, and it's a little bit frustrating when it's out of calibration. This is the big annoyance with the Leica M rangefinder cameras, is you have to pay to get them recalibrated roughly once a year from my experience, and that's time away from the camera and of course additional expense. So I was hitting focus at f2. I didn't even try at 1.4 because I knew I'd miss focus. So I was having to shoot at f2.8 if I was using the rangefinder, and then after day 1 I'm like, oh, this is just stupid. So then I just used the EVF for the rest of the three-day photo shoot in Poland, and obviously you can't miss with an EVF, so that's good. It's just a little bit slower, and you do miss the beauty of enjoying a rangefinder focusing system. It is nice, it's just it needs to be calibrated. And then I was using the 1.4 magnifier to give me a better chance of hitting focus. Okay, so those are the cons. Now let's talk a little bit more positive. What are the pros or things that I enjoyed seeing on the M240? Pro number 1, as I say, if you've seen this channel before, I recently bought the Leica Q, and one notable difference between the Q and the M240 is the battery life is fantastic on the M240. It does have quite a large battery, where the Leica Q in comparison is pretty rubbish. Probably 3 batteries up for the Leica Q for a day of shooting, and probably one and a bit for the M240. So that is one pro of having a slightly thicker camera body compared to the M10 in terms of thickness of the camera to house that big fat battery. Number 2, as I say, I've been used to using the SL with Leica M-mount lenses mostly for quite a long time, and so I've got used to the bigger, heavier camera, and it doesn't really feel big or heavy to me now because it's just my normal. So going back to the M240, it did feel nice and small, and it does fit in my jacket pocket with the lens attached. Normally I use a small Billingham Hadley digital camera bag, but this trip I knew I was shooting mostly inside or close to the apartment, so I didn't take a small bag with me. Then on the last night, I was all packed up, ready to fly home. It's like 9 p.m. and the model texts me and she's like, if you want to meet me in town, I'll meet you now for photos. And I was like, it's like 9 o'clock at night. And I was like, okay. And I've never met her before. I'd one of these girls where I write to people and say, would you like pictures? And then if they see the message, they'll reply and say, yes, I can, or no, I'm away, or whatever. She had just read the message. So I had to walk through town in the dark, and I didn't really want to be flashing my Leica camera around. So I just had the M240 in my pocket. This is the girl that I was shooting in the dark with the high ISO 1000 photos that I showed earlier in the video. But she had a really nice surprise. She was carrying one of those normal to me, like what the younger people use. Some of the girls have like small little cute rucksacks, and I'd have thought it was like what girls normally carry to have the purse and the makeup and all that kind of thing in. I took some photos of her, and then she's like, give me a second, I've brought something. And she opens the bag and she pulls out a Polaroid camera. And she's like, stay still and I'll take your picture. And so here is the Polaroid that she took of me with my M240 while I was photographing her. So that was an amazing surprise. I don't meet many models that rock up with a Polaroid camera with film loaded. So yeah, thanks so much. That was amazing. So size, yes, the small size of it fitting in your pocket and small size to fit in your camera bag. M cameras are pretty amazing when it comes to the size of the bodies and the size of the lenses. You can carry multiple bodies. So for me, I was carrying, as I say, the M240 and the M3 with 3 Leica M-mount lenses, and that covered me for the 3-day photo shoot. Number 3, the M240 obviously has the rangefinder focusing system. As I say, it is frustrating when it's not in calibration, but when it is in calibration, it's really good. You can focus in the dark easier with an M240 or any rangefinder camera than you can with, say, the SL and an autofocus camera, because the autofocus will be hunting in the dark to try to see the face. But as one of my patrons reminded me on a call last week, the advantage of the rangefinders, he uses an M9, is he just sets up an iPhone or something, so there's a tiny point of light which will give a catch light on the eye. And then all you need to do is line up the catch light. It doesn't matter if everything else is pitch black, as long as those catch lights line up, you know you're going to nail a shot if your rangefinder's in calibration. So that's a pro tip from Toby, one of my patrons, and he uses M9 cameras. Same on the M240 and same on M10, M11, any rangefinder camera if you're working in the dark. If you're working with the SL, just turn off your autofocus, manually focus it, use the PAS mode, and then you can see in the dark anyway. Coming at number 4, the retro look of the M240 or any M cameras does catch more positive attention than, say, the CL, which probably captures the least, and the SL, which might capture some. People do seem to love the look of the Leica M cameras. Mine's in silver, and so everyone always thinks it's an analog camera. So you do get positive vibes from people when using an M camera. I'd say more so than any other Leica series camera. And then number 5, despite me saying about the limited dynamic range and the high ISO limitations, the M cameras can take really, really nice photos. The look of the photos from the M240 is partly because of the lenses that I was using, but they are very, very different to the photos I shot on my previous model shoot in Poland when I took the Leica SL with the Sigma L-mount lenses, the 65mm, the 35mm, and I also talked about the 50 Apo. Those were all very, very sharp lenses and they give a modern look. And I was moaning it, oh, it's too modern, blah, blah, blah. The M240 with the 50mm lenses I was using, this strip, they are the complete opposite. You have a very, call it what you want, organic look, slightly filmic look, very, very pleasing to the eye and much more arty looking, I think. The M240 can still take really nice pictures. I'm sure you all know that, but just pointing out the obvious. I was very happy with the photos I shot when they were in focus. And that brings me on to number 6, when they were in focus. Actually, when the photos are not in focus and or you're using a high ISO, the photos really do look like 80s, 90s film photos. I'll bring up an example of this photo. Reminds me of like a cover photo from, I don't know, a 90s pop magazine. It's not quite sharp, even though it's shot at f2. I think the plane of focus has just missed the eyes, and so I think that look of not quite sharp reminds me of film. And then, as I say, the ones in the evening in the low lights, you're getting like banding, you're getting pretty much all the artifacts that you get with film photos in digital. As I say, more filmic looking for sure than the SL sensor. I'm not sure if that's a combination of the dynamic range, the ISO limitations, the focus limitations if you're using the rangefinder and it's not calibrated, and the design of the sensor. I know some say the M sensors are supposed to be designed to look more filmic. Whether that's true or not, I'll have to do another video and maybe do a side-by-side geeky comparison. And so can I recommend the Leica M240 in 2022, 10 years after the release? I would say yes. The biggest advantage is probably, well, multiple. I'd say some of the advantages are, I'd say number 1, it's a cheaper entry point into the M system. You're going to have the benefits of the modern features of a CMOS sensor compared to the M8 and the M9. The M8 and the M9 are going to be more filmic. The M240 is going to be better in low light, despite what I just said. And you've got the advantage of the EVF, which is a big plus. Because the M240 gives you live view, you can then use, say, R lenses or non-rangefinder coupled lenses on your M240 if you so wish, where you can't do that easily on the M8 or the M9. and the M240 is probably £1,000 or £1,200 cheaper than an M10. I checked eBay, prices seem to be around £2,400, and so this brings me on to recommendation number 2. The price of the M240 never really seems to change in the last few years. So if you bought this camera, say in 2020, you could have had a huge amount of fun with it for 2 years, sold it in 2022 for pretty much the same amount of money, maybe even a slight profit. Free Leica for 2 years. That's pretty cool, I think. That is one huge advantage of Leica systems. If you buy Leica, they pretty much always hold the value. If you don't buy new, try and buy used, whether it's lenses or cameras. If you want something more modern, I'd say get the cheaper SL, which is what I use. It's better in every way for client work. It's just not comparable. If you're a hobbyist and you prefer a bit more of a clunky feeling camera and you love rangefinders, then you'll love the M240. If you want autofocus, I'd get the Q. If you want something even smaller, get the CL. I have done a video with all 4 cameras. So try and do all 4 Leica cameras that I use high ISO test, and all 4 Leicas that I use color test. And then we can see whether the photos from the M240 really are more filmic or whether they're just old wives' tales. And so did I regret taking the M240 instead of the SL? I'd say a little bit. I don't miss focus with the SL because with the amazing EVF I hit focus every time. You literally cannot miss. That said, I did get very nice photos from the M240, and I say I don't know if that was the lenses or if it was the camera sensor. The good news is this is the first video of probably 4 from Poland. The next 2 videos will be on the 2 50mm lenses that I was using, vintage 50mm lenses. I think you'll like them, so feel free to subscribe if you've not already done so. And then the 4th video will be a completely different camera for any of you that love film photography. And with that, if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. As always, a massive thanks to my awesome patrons. And if you want to see a summary of all 4 digital Leica cameras that I use, watch this video next.